I wasn't supposed to be home. The universe, in its twisted way, had canceled my meeting, setting the stage for a revelation I never saw coming. Instead of wasting an afternoon at the office, I decided to play the doting husband, swinging by Eastbridge Bakery for Jessica's favorite almond croissants. You know, try to earn those invisible husband points that we all chase. Instead, I earned clarity, a kind of crystal clear, gut-wrenching understanding that shattered my entire world in an instant. The moment my hand touched the doorknob, I heard it, the soft symphony of betrayal. Laughter, light and airy, wine glasses clinking like tiny, celebratory bells, and voices so familiar, floating in from the kitchen. Jessica's voice, and with it, Jenna's, Jessica's closest friend since college, the one who always wore control like it was her signature perfume. Jenna, whose advice always sounded suspiciously like a strategic military briefing, was in full flow. You just have to control the rhythm, Jess, Jenna advised, her voice a low, conspiratorial hum. Act loving, patient. Then drop the divorce bomb right after he's relaxed. He'll be begging you to stay, swearing to change. That's when you ask for the house. A beat of knowing laughter followed. The clinking of glasses again. Then Marcy, Jessica's co-worker from her niche boutique job, chimed in. Marcy's voice always carried more venom than volume, a subtle hiss that could curdle milk. Don't forget the car, Marcy added, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. A guy like Michael, he'll even offer up if you just look heartbroken enough. Cry during the speech. Extra tears if you can. Men fall apart when we pretend they've failed us. Jessica's response, when it came, was a chilling symphony of calculated artifice. Her laugh, light, performative, meticulously practiced, filled the space. Oh, I already told him last week how much I appreciate his sacrifices. You should have seen the way he looked at me, like I was his entire world. Jenna cackled, a sharp, triumphant sound. Oh my God, you're actually a queen. He has no idea, Marcy added, a touch of admiration in her voice. That's the point, Jessica said, her voice cool, measured, and utterly devoid of warmth. I want him to feel safe. Then, I'll tell him I've been reevaluating my emotional needs. Make him believe he's the one who broke me. I stood frozen in the hallway, the pastry box in my hand growing heavy, a tangible symbol of my naive devotion. Every word felt like a physical slap across the chest, echoing in the hollow chambers of my heart. My throat dried out completely, a desert where only bitter ash remained. My entire life, the life I'd meticulously built with her, flashed before my eyes, dissolving into a meaningless charade. Marcy, ever the pragmatist, punctured the insidious intimacy of the moment. Why drag it out, though? Just hit him with it now. Jessica's voice lowered, becoming intimate, sharp, utterly lethal. Because if I do it right, he'll never even resent me. He'll hand over half his life, still thinking I'm the victim. They all burst into fresh, riotous laughter, a sound that drilled into my skull like a rusty auger. The sound of my impending humiliation. And if it gets difficult? Jenna asked, a sly edge to her voice. I'll tell people he's emotionally distant, that he never prioritized me. It's not even a lie, Jessica said with a smug shrug, as if the truth itself was merely a suggestion. I mean, he still wears those busted brown loafers to dinner. Oh, girl, Marcy gasped, delighted by the casual cruelty. Don't roast the shoes. That's when something cracked inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, subtly, like the first splinter in ice before it gives way completely. It wasn't the pain that broke me. It was the sheer, breathtaking audacity of her calculation. The shoes, my worn, comfortable, perfectly functional brown loafers, a symbol of my quiet, unassuming life, now weaponized, ridiculed, used as proof of my supposed inadequacy. I backed up, step by agonizing step, retracing my way out the front door like a ghost leaving its own house. They didn't hear me leave. Why would they? The fool wasn't supposed to be listening. The fool was supposed to be at a canceled meeting, oblivious, preparing to return to a perfectly staged performance. Outside, I stood under our sprawling maple tree, its newly unfurled leaves shimmering innocently in the afternoon sun. I stared up at the bedroom window, the place I thought was my sanctuary, our shared haven. It was a stage, and I was the joke, but not for long. Not anymore. I looked down at the box in my hand. The pastries were still warm, still radiating that sweet, innocent aroma, like a lie that hadn't cooled yet. I took a breath so deep it shook in my chest, a desperate attempt to fill the gaping void where my heart used to be. If Jessica wanted performance, she'd get one. But mine would be the closing act, the grand finale. The air outside bit colder than it should have for mid-April, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the icy clarity of my new reality. But I didn't feel it. I was walking, putting one foot in front of the other, but everything inside me was still stuck in that hallway, echoing with Jessica's voice, her laughter, her meticulously crafted game plan. And I kept hearing that phrase, that insidious little whisper that pierced deeper than any shouted accusation. Make him believe he's the one who broke me. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated humiliation, a takedown wrapped in fake affection, a slow, agonizing bleed-out designed to make me question my own sanity, my own worth. But I wouldn't give them that scene. No shouting match, no begging, no pathetic accusations. If they wanted a fool, they'd get one, just not the one they expected. I would play the role she'd written for me, but I would improvise. I would rewrite the script. I passed a little flower shop, tucked almost shyly between a bustling dry cleaner and a bespoke tie place. The kind of shop I barely glanced at before, always rushing past. Focus on the next task, the next selfless act for us. That day, I walked in like I knew exactly what I wanted, like I had been planning this moment my entire life. A little bell above the door chimed, a gentle, welcoming sound. The scent hit me first, a symphony of roses, fresh eucalyptus, something bright and citrusy. Warm yellow lights glowed softly, illuminating shelves overflowing with vibrant blooms. A slow, melancholic jazz track played on a record player in the corner, its melody a stark contrast to the war zone inside my chest. It was a world away from the sterile, calculated cruelty I had just left, a world I now craved. The florist, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s with kind eyes, looked up from trimming a vibrant bunch of hydrangeas. "Need help finding something?" she asked, her voice gentle, unhurried. I nodded, my voice, to my surprise, perfectly calm, almost serene. "Lilies. White. The freshest you've got." She gave me a polite, knowing smile, the kind reserved for unspoken romantic gestures, and moved toward a small refrigerated display case filled with dewy, perfect blooms. "Special occasion?" I smiled back, a hollow, practiced gesture. "Just love." Even saying the word made my stomach turn, a bitter, ironic twist. As she meticulously wrapped the towering bouquet in crinkly brown paper and tied it with rough twine, I watched her fingers. Steady, deliberate. There was something oddly comforting in how carefully she worked, how focused she was on the small, precise task. I wanted to match that calm. I needed to, because what Jessica didn't know was that she had just declared emotional war, and I wasn't walking in blind. Not anymore. "You want a card with that?" the florist asked, holding up a tiny, pristine white envelope. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just right. You make the ordinary beautiful." She smiled again, a genuine, warm smile this time. "That's lovely. Thank you for that." "No," I replied, my gaze distant, already rehearsing the next scene. "She deserves it." And she did, just not in the way the florist thought. I walked out, the massive bouquet in my hand, feeling strangely composed, almost attached, like I was slipping into a role. And maybe I was, because from this moment on, I wasn't Michael the devoted husband, the fumbling, easily manipulated fool. I was Michael the player, the director, the closing act. I rehearsed it in my head on the drive home. The smile, the warmth, the timing of the kiss. I could see the scene unfolding before it even happened. Jessica's expression when she opened the door, expecting nothing, and instead saw a towering bouquet of white lilies in my hand. Her absolute favorite. A delicate, handwritten card tucked neatly inside. She'd think I was blind, still deeply, pathetically in love. And that, precisely, was the point. I didn't want to match her cruelty. I didn't want to descend into her petty, vindictive game. I wanted to dissolve it. With kindness so disarming, so precise, so utterly unexpected. She wouldn't see the noose tightening until it was too late. Until she had, in essence, tightened herself. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my mask was firmly in place. My hands didn't shake. My face didn't twitch. I was the same Michael she thought she knew, just a little more thoughtful than usual, a little more predictable. I stood at the door for a second, took one last breath, steadying the final tremors of my shattered heart. Then I walked inside, ready to begin the final act. Okay, first, the moment I stepped into the living room, the air crackled. The energy didn't just shift. It snapped to attention, like three predators looking up from their kill at the sound of a twig. Jessica was on the couch, one leg tucked under the other, wine glass in hand, caught mid-laugh with the same two women I'd heard earlier. Jenna, Marcy, the same voices, the same smug energy. My personal jury, already sharpening their knives, still buzzing from their strategy session from my downfall. But now, the only thing on my face was a smile. A soft, slightly tired, completely devoted smile. "Hey," I said warmly. I held the bouquet out in front of me, a massive, fragrant shield of white lilies. Figured I'd surprise you. All three women looked up at once. 3 pairs of eyes, all assessing me, all measuring my stupidity. I saw Jenna's eyes narrow, just a fraction. I saw Marcy's lips twitch, suppressing a smirk. And then I looked at Jessica. She blinked. It was a small, almost imperceptible reaction, but I saw it. It was the blue screen moment. The file not found error in her carefully coded plan. I wasn't supposed to be home. I wasn't supposed to be smiling. And I definitely wasn't supposed to be bringing flowers. Her lips, which had been curled in amusement a second before, flattened into a line of pure confusion. Then, just as quickly, she recovered. The mask snapped back into place. Her expression softened into something amused, almost condescending. "Michael," she said, her voice a little too high, "you're early." I walked over. This was the first test. I leaned down, kissed her cheek lightly. Her skin was warm, and she smelled like her expensive perfume and the sharp tang of white wine. I handed her the bouquet. "Saw these and thought of you." I said, my voice just the right amount of soft. "Still your favorite, right?" She took them, her movements a bit stiff, her eyes darting from the flowers to my face, looking for the catch. She barely glanced at the card tucked inside. You didn't have to," she murmured. "I wanted to," I said, and I held her gaze, let her see the sincerity. Jenna tilted her head, her strategist's brain whirring. She was already recalculating, absorbing this new data point. She flashed a tight, painted-on smile. "Well, someone's earning extra husband points today," she drawled, her voice like honey mixed with glass. Jessica finally found her footing. She let out a little laugh, a sound I now recognize as pure performance. "Oh, he does that," she said, waving a dismissive hand, as if my devotion was a cute but slightly embarrassing party trick. "He's sweet like that." Sweet, the word she and her friends had been mocking just an hour ago. Now it was a tool she used to put me back in my box, right in front of them. I turned to Jenna, giving her a casual, harmless grin. I had to play to the entire audience. "Well," I said, shrugging, "when you're married to someone this beautiful, you try to keep her from realizing she could do better." That got a few polite laughs. Even Jessica chuckled, though I saw the flicker in her eyes. It was a flicker of, was it doubt? No, it was recalculation. This wasn't the broken, distant man she was planning to paint in her divorce narrative. This was a man still actively, pathetically trying, which for her was even better. It made her job easier. "Can I get you ladies anything?" I asked, already moving toward the kitchen, playing the perfect host. "More wine? Sparkling water?" "We're fine," Marcy said, her voice bored. She was already back to scrolling on her phone, but I was already grabbing the chilled bottle of rose from the fridge door. Jessica liked it cold. "Crisp. No ice." I knew every detail. I poured her a fresh glass, walked back into the living room, and set it gently on the coffee table, right beside her knee. She stared at it. She stared at the glass like it might explode. This level of attentiveness was off script. I was supposed to be the emotionally distant one, remember? The one who wears the busted loafers. "I miss you today." I added, my voice low. I sat down in the armchair across from them, the one in the corner, folded my hands, making myself look open, harmless. "You look amazing, by the way. Is that a new dress?" Jessica gave a breathy little laugh, the sound almost genuine. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a preening gesture. "Yeah, just picked it up yesterday." I let my gaze hold hers. I let her see the admiration. "It suits you," I said. She held that gaze for just a second too long, her head tilted, completely and totally confused, but also intrigued. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I wasn't supposed to be charming. I was supposed to be fumbling, needy, boring. I was supposed to be the man she could justify leaving. By being this attentive, I was in her mind, just making her case for her. Proving I was a man who could be controlled, if she just knew which buttons to push. Jenna leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "You always this smooth, Michael? Or is this a special occasion?" I shrugged, smiling at her. Only when I mean it. The room settled into a new, strange rhythm. It was comfortable on the surface, but underneath, the tension buzzed like a faulty electrical wire. Jessica kept stealing sideways glances at me, and I could practically see the question forming behind her lashes. Did he hear us? But I gave her nothing. No edge in my tone, no bitterness in my smile, no sign of the ice-cold truth I had buried just beneath my ribs. She wouldn't see it. She couldn't see it. Because to see it, she'd have to believe I was capable of this. And in her world, I was just a guy with the busted loafers. I'm going to go start dinner, I said finally, standing up, breaking the strange spell. Figured I'd make that pasta you like, the one with the roasted red peppers. Jessica stared up at me like I'd just sprouted a second head. You're cooking? Thought you deserved a night off, I said. I leaned down. I kissed her forehead. A slow, careful, deliberate act of affection. A lie, told with my lips. You girls stay comfy. I turned and walked into the kitchen, my back to them, feeling their 3 sets of eyes burning into my shoulder blades. The performance was, for now, complete. As I started pulling pots and pans from the cabinets, making just enough noise to seem busy, I heard Marcy murmur, her voice a low hiss. Girl, you were lucky. He's really trying. There was a pause. I held my breath, waiting for Jessica's response. Lucky? She said, her voice thoughtful, almost musing. Not quite. I smiled, a cold, thin smile that no one could see. She was about to learn what it really meant to lose something you thought you controlled. And me? I was just getting started. I was in the kitchen, stirring the pasta. The sound of the spoon scraping against the bottom of the pot was the only thing grounding me. From the living room, I could hear the performance winding down. The sound of departure, the gathering of purses, the scraping of chair legs, and that symphony of high-pitched, insincere goodbyes. Oh my God, Jess, this was amazing. Seriously, Michael, you have to give me that pasta recipe. We have to do this again. Love you. Bye. Love you. The words were thrown around like confetti, meaningless and bright. I just kept stirring, my knuckles white on the spoon. Then, the sound I was waiting for, the click of the front door closing, the snick of the deadbolt, silence. The house, which moments before had been filled with their toxic, buzzing energy, was now completely still. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. This was it. The audience was gone. Now, the one-on-one performance, the real one, was about to begin. I heard her footsteps. She wasn't walking. She was prowling. She came into the kitchen, not to help, but to assess, to analyze. She had her wine glass in hand, swirling the last of the rose. Her eyes narrowed. She was processing the evening. She was processing me, the flowers, the dinner, the compliments. Her brain was whirring, trying to fit this new, attentive Michael into her pre-written script of the emotionally distant loser. She leaned against the counter, a perfect picture of casual, bored elegance. You know, she said, her voice light, syrupy, and laced with amusement that made my skin crawl. You really outdid yourself tonight, Michael. I didn't look up from the pot. I just kept stirring. Just wanted to make a nice dinner. No, I mean... She pushed off the counter, walking a slow, lazy circle around the kitchen island. You really pulled out all the stops. The flowers, the food, the whole attentive husband thing. She stopped, directly across from me. It's almost sweet. She took a sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving my face. Makes me wonder where this guy's been for the past. 3 years? There it was. The first jab. The first little test. She was probing, looking for the weakness. I finally looked up, letting my shoulders slump just a little. I gave her a small, almost ashamed smile. The smile of a man who knows he's been caught. Yeah, well, guess I've been distracted, I said, my voice quiet, easy to take things for granted. I was feeding her exactly what she wanted. I wasn't just playing the part of the distant husband. I was admitting to it. A slow, satisfied smile spread across her face. This was a victory for her. This confirmed her narrative. Well, keep it up, she said, taking another delicate sip. You've been almost tolerable lately. I let out a small, self-deprecating chuckle. Wow, I'll take tolerable over unbearable. That's progress, right? I was making it so easy for her. I was playing the beaten dog, wagging its tail at the first sign of a scrap. And she, the predator, was loving it. She set her empty glass in the sink, a silent, clear command for me to wash it later, and leaned against the counter next to me. "You know," she said, her voice dropping, becoming more confidential, as if she were letting me in on a secret. "Jenna thinks you're the type who could be trained." She let the word hang in the air. Trained. She says all men, especially the quiet, steady ones, eventually fold if you just push them the right way. If you just guide them, show them what you want. I turned the heat off the stove, the click of the knob echoing in the quiet. I kept my expression soft, curious, harmless, the perfect fool. "Did you believe that?" I asked. Jessica gave a sly little grin. She was so confident, so in control. "I think she might be right," she whispered. "You've been a lot more agreeable lately." She tilted her head. A lot less you. That's what she wanted. She didn't want a partner. She wanted a project she could break down and rebuild in her own image. She wanted a ghost. And I was going to give her a ghost. This was the moment. This was the opening I'd been waiting for. I turned to her, my face a perfect mask of vulnerability and dawning realization. I was about to hand her the exact weapon she planned to use against me. Actually, I started, my voice low, almost uncertain. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us." Her eyes sharpened. She was hooked. "And I think you're right," I said, looking down at the floor, as if I was ashamed. "I think I've been the problem." I saw her blink. Just once. This was better than her plan. She was going to make me believe I broke her? No, I was going to tell her I broke her. I was handing her the gun, the confession and the motive, all wrapped in a bow. "I think maybe I haven't been doing enough," I continued, stumbling over the words just enough to sound genuine. "To, support you, emotionally, or just around the house." I looked up, meeting her gaze, my eyes wide with sincerity. "I've been, too self-focused, caught up in work. I've been distant. I see that now." I was reciting her own script back to her, the script I'd overheard from the hallway, and she had no idea. I want you to feel valued." I finished, my voice thick. She was stunned. She was staring at me, her mind racing. This was a jackpot. This was her entire case. Served up on a silver platter. The condescension in her eyes melted away, replaced by a cold, calculating, false concern. This was her victim narrative, confirmed by the perpetrator himself. She stepped closer, her tone shifting, becoming soft, almost motherly. "Michael," she said, her voice a purr. You really believe that?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I just looked at her, my expression full of remorse. "Yeah," I finally whispered. "I do." She smiled, a slow, deeply satisfied smile. She reached out and placed her hand on my arm, a light, proprietary, condescending touch. "Well," she said, her voice full of false warmth. That's a start, Michael. That's a real start." I felt the revulsion of her touch, a cold snake slithering up my arm. I watched her turn and walk out of the kitchen, her hips swaying with a new, victorious confidence. She was completely, 100% hooked. She didn't just think she was in control. She knew it. The predator, I thought, as I turned back to pasta, had just mistaken her praise camouflage for surrender. And now, the real trap could be set. My confession in the kitchen was the key. It was a master switch I'd flipped. And in the days that followed, the entire atmosphere of the house changed. The low, humming tension I used to live with was gone, replaced by something far more insidious, a thick, syrupy, condescending calm. Jessica, armed with my admission that I was the problem, had finally, in her mind, won. She was no longer a co-conspirator in a hostile takeover. She was a benevolent queen, graciously accepting the surrender of a broken, wayward subject. And now, the testing could begin. It started the very next morning. I was in the bedroom, getting ready for work, reaching for my old, comfortable, busted brown loafers. "Oh, honey, no." Her voice came from the doorway. She was leaning against a frame, a steaming mug of coffee in her hand. Her expression one of patient, pained amusement, like a mother about to scold a child for trying to wear a swimsuit in the snow. I froze, my hand hovering over the shoes. "What?" "Not those," she said, nodding at the loafers with a delicate, theatrical shudder. We talked about this, remember? You're your image. It doesn't say, I'm a man who values himself. It doesn't say, I'm a man who values me. I looked from the shoes to her face. Her smile was so kind, so fake. This was it. The training. I had to play my part. I let my shoulders slump, my expression turning to one of shame. You're right. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. It's okay, she cooed, walking over. That's why I'm here. To help. She reached into the closet and pulled out the stiff black, pointed-toe dress shoes she bought me for a wedding 2 years ago. The ones that felt like 2 tiny, leather-bound prisons for my feet. Try these. They're much more aspirational. I sat on the edge of the bed and slowly, dutifully, undid the laces of my comfort and slid my feet into her correction. I could feel the leather biting into my heels before I even stood up. See, she said, her voice bright. So much better. You look like a man who's actually trying. She gave me a little, good boy, pat on the shoulder and walked out, humming. I stood up, took a step. The shoes pinched. Every step was a small, physical, painful reminder of the role I was playing. The first test was passed. A few days later, on Tuesday, I was in the living room, trying to read a book. Or at least, pretending to. My mind wasn't on the pages. It was on the clock, on the calendar, on the next move. Jessica walked in. Her phone pressed to her ear, a cloud of expensive perfume trailing behind her. She was in the middle of a call, laughing. Oh, I know, Jenna. It's like a different person, she said, her voice high and performative. He's trying so hard now, it's almost cute. She saw me. She knew I could hear her. She didn't hang up. She didn't even lower her voice. She wanted me to hear. She smiled at me, a bright, empty smile, and then gestured with her free hand to an overflowing laundry basket in the corner, one she'd apparently dragged in just for this performance. These need to be folded, she mouthed, her voice still going into the phone. No, he's right here, just, being helpful. She turned her back to me, giving me her full attention while pretending to give me none at all, and continued her conversation. I closed my book. I didn't sigh. I didn't hesitate. I just stood up, walked over the basket, and began to fold. I could hear her, just a few feet away, describing my surrender in real time to the very person who had helped plan my takedown. It was a victory lap, and I was the track. No, actually separating the whites. I think he's finally getting it. I separated the whites from the darks. I folded her silk blouses, her niche boutique dresses, my own busted t-shirts. My hands moved with a steady, robotic calm. I wasn't just folding clothes. I was folding myself. I was making myself smaller, more manageable, exactly the ghost she'd been training me to be. She finally ended her call with a flourish. Okay, gotta go, babe. Love you. Bye. She walked over and, I kid you not, she inspected a t-shirt I had just folded. She picked it up, turned it over, and set it back down. You're getting better at this, she said, her voice dripping with the kind of condescending praise you'd give to a golden retriever for not chewing the furniture. She was praising a dog, not her husband, and I just smiled. Happy to help, I said. The more I played into her script, the more confident she became. She saw my silence as surrender, my humility as weakness, and her test became more public. On Wednesday, she allowed me to come with her to meet Marcy for a quick drink after work. The moment we sat down, I could feel the energy. I was the night's entertainment. So, Michael, Marcy said, not even waiting for the menus. She was leaning forward, her eyes gleaming with a kind of cruel curiosity. I hear you're the new husband of the year. Folding laundry, cooking. What's next? Are you going to learn to knit? I felt the heat rise in my neck, but I just gave a small, awkward laugh. Oh, be nice, Marcy, Jessica interjected, patting my hand on the table. But her eyes were laughing, giving Marcy the green light. He's learning. We're still working on the ambition part, though. He's so content just, being... She squeezed my hand. It's sweet. Sweet. There was again. The verbal pat on the head. The word that meant controllable. I had to play along. I had to be the punchline. Yeah, well, I said, shrugging, my voice perfectly pitched to sound defeated. Someone's got to keep the couch warm, right? The words tasted like acid, but they both cackled. Jessica looked at Marcy with a "see, I told you" expression. I was their joke, their shared, pathetic little project. I just smiled, took a sip of my water, and let them have their fun. The more I played the fool, the more she let her guard down. She had no idea that every time she pushed, I was just measuring her arrogance, measuring the distance of her inevitable fall. But the real moment, the one that I'll replay in my head for years, came late one night. We were in the bathroom, the two of us side by side at the vanity, this oddly intimate, mundane ritual, brushing our teeth, for a couple who were in reality active combatants in a silent, brutal war. I was staring at my own reflection, at this thing I'd become, this smiling, agreeable, empty shell. I was so deep in character, I was starting to lose the plot. She glanced over at me in the mirror, her mouth full of foam. "You know," she said, her voice casual, muffled, "I used to think you'd never be able to handle me leaving. I thought you'd just fall apart." I paused. I spat. I rinsed. I could feel my heart hammering. I had to get this line perfect. I turned and looked her dead in the eye, not in the mirror, but at her. I put just the right amount of tremor in my voice. Just a hint of the broken man she wanted me to be. "You used to think that?" She smiled. That slow, satisfied, predatory smile. The one that said, "Gotcha." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. She just turned back to the sink. I smiled too. A small, defeated, broken smile aimed at my own reflection. "Well," I whispered, just loud enough for her to hear. "Maybe I'm just slower to adapt. But I think I'm learning." That was the line that sealed it. I'm learning. She saw it as me learning to be her version of a man. She saw it as my final, unconditional surrender. She had no idea what I was really learning. Over the next few days, her confidence surged. She started dressing a little sharper, even around the house. She made louder, longer, more intimate-sounding phone calls in the next room, laughing a little harder at her phone screen when she thought I was nearby. She was preparing her moment. She was polishing her grand, heartbreaking "It's me" speech. And me? I was watching. I was memorizing. I was taking notes. There's something incredibly dangerous about a man who stays silent long enough to see the entire battlefield. And Jessica had no idea that I wasn't playing dead. I was playing her. The pinch in my heels was a constant, sharp reminder. I was wearing the black, aspirational prison shoes Jessica had chosen for me, the ones that represented the man she was training me to be. But as I walked across the polished marble floor of the lobby, I realized she'd made a terrible mistake. She thought these shoes were a symbol of her control. She was wrong. They were a symbol of my restraint. They were my armor. And I was walking in perfect, painful lockstep into the one place where men like me go when they're done playing the fool. The law office of Thomas Cranford was sleek. That's the only word for it. It wasn't a place. It was a statement. Everything was glass partitions, brushed steel, and dark, supple leather chairs that seemed to whisper about billable hours. The air didn't smell like paper or old books. It smelled like expensive espresso from a machine I probably couldn't afford, and a faint, clinical hint of Windex. This wasn't a place for messy emotions. It wasn't a place for crying or begging or second chances. This was a place for winning. Cold, sharp, expensive winning. Exactly what I needed. The receptionist, a woman who looked like she'd been carved from the same flawless marble as the floor, gave me a tight, professional smile that didn't come within a mile of her eyes. "Michael Bennett, 10:30 with Mr. Cranford?" "That's right," I said. My voice sounded more confident than I felt. She gestured, not with a hand, but with a precise tilt of her head, toward a frosted glass door. "You can go right in." When I stepped inside, the man behind the desk didn't look up right away. He was in his late 50s, I guessed, impeccably clean-shaven, with a suit so sharp it looked like it could cut you, and a head of perfectly coiled silver hair that probably cost more to maintain than my car's insurance. He was signing a document, his movements economical and precise. He looked less like a lawyer and more like a surgeon or a general. He looked like the kind of man who enjoyed winning arguments that left his opponents broke, divorced, or preferably both. Finally, he set the pen down, perfectly parallel to his notepad, and looked up, his eyes were the color of a winter sky. "Michael," he said. It wasn't a question. He stood, and I was surprised to find he was shorter than I was, though he radiated an energy that made him seem 6'5". He shook my hand. His grip was firm, dry, and brief. "I'm Thomas Cranford." He gestured to the chair opposite his desk. "You've got that look." I sat down, the leather sign beneath me. "What look is that?" He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, like a doctor confirming a terminal diagnosis. The one people wear when they've already been betrayed. He leaned back slightly, his eyes never leaving mine. And now they're here to make sure they don't get betrayed twice. I sat there in that cold, quiet office, and I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The pinching in my shoes seemed to be the only sound in the room. He nodded again, a flicker of something, not empathy, but understanding, passing through his gaze. He opened a fresh, leather-bound notepad and clicked a heavy, silver pen. So, tell me why you're really here, Michael. I stared at the edge of his immaculate desk, a perfect, sharp 90-degree angle. I ran my thumb along the corner of the leather chair. I want out of my marriage, I said, my voice flat. He didn't blink. You want a clean break or a strategic one? That got my attention. I looked up. Explain. Thomas leaned back, steepling his fingers. He looked like a professor about to dissect a frog. A clean break, he said, his voice a calm, clinical monotone, is about closure, honesty. You put your cards on the table. You split the assets. You maybe yell. You maybe cry. But in the end, everyone walks away as intact as possible. It's for spouses. I felt the word spouses land like a stone in my gut. We weren't spouses. We were an actress and her prop. What's a strategic one? I asked. A small, thin smile touched Cranford's lips. It didn't make him look friendly. It made him look hungry. That, he said, is for people who've been played. It's for people who discover the game is rigged. He leaned forward. A strategic break isn't about closure. It's about leverage. It's for people who want to make sure the other party doesn't walk away smiling. I told him everything. I told him about the canceled meeting, the pastries, the hallway. I recited the plan I'd overheard, word for word. Control the rhythm. Ask for the house. Make him believe he's the one who broke me. I even told him about the shoes. When I finished, Cranford jotted something down, then set the pen aside. He looked not pleased, but satisfied, like I just handed him a puzzle he already knew how to solve. Well, he said, his voice brisk, good news. You're early. Most men walk in here after the bomb has dropped. They walk in here angry and blindsided, and usually after they've already signed something they didn't read in a fit of misplaced guilt. I'm not most men, I replied. Clearly. He flipped to a new page. Okay, let's talk assets. Income, joint accounts, property, her employment status, this niche boutique of hers. Is it profitable? We got into the details. For 20 minutes, I wasn't a husband. I was a balance sheet. He walked me through the steps like a general explaining troop movements. There was no emotion, just strategy. Here's what I suggest, he said, tapping a folder I hadn't even noticed on his desk. We file. Quietly. We file today. We get a docket number. We get a judge assigned. It establishes a timeline. But, he paused, holding my gaze, we don't serve her. Not yet. The petition sits. It waits. Why? Because, Cranford said, it gives you control of the timeline. Right now, she thinks she's in control. She thinks she's directing this little play. We let her. We let her build her stage, learn her lines, put on her costume. And then, at the moment of your choosing, you can walk on stage and hand her the final script. You get to choose a delivery. I nodded slowly, a cold, sharp, focused feeling settling in my chest. Can you keep it discreet? I don't want her friends, her family. Cranford almost looked insulted. Michael, he said, my clients include 2 city councilmen, a local news anchor, and a plastic surgeon whose ex-wife tried to sue for partial ownership of a chin implant patent. If discretion were an Olympic sport, I'd have a gold medal permanently welded to my chest. No one knows anything until you want them to know. For the first time that morning, I actually smiled. A real, if cold, smile. He slid the draft papers across the desk. A thick stack of documents, clean, bulletproof, and utterly ruthless. It's all here. Division of assets, based on your pre-filing disclosures. It's clean. It's fair. But it is not generous. I stared at the stack of documents for a long time. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like armor. You sign when you're ready, he said. I picked up his heavy silver pen. I'm ready now. When I finally left the office, the bright sunlight hit my face like a spotlight. Everything looked strangely, intensely ordinary. The coffee shop across the street. A couple arguing over a parking meter. Birds picking at crumbs on the sidewalk. The world hadn't changed. But I had. I walked down the street, my aspirational shoes pinching my heels, but I barely felt it. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was just focused. Jessica still thought she was orchestrating a perfect, heartbreaking performance. She thought I was a quiet, broken audience, waiting for her final, devastating act. She had no idea the curtains were already closing, and I was the one pulling the rope. The laundry room. It was always a testament to her, a small, sterile kingdom where she reigned supreme. The air was thick with the scent of lavender, not the fresh, plant-based kind, but the expensive, chemical, engineered kind. Jessica insisted on it. It was her little sanctuary of order, a place where everything was folded just so. Towels were rolled like sushi. Labels on the designer detergent jars, all in matching glass containers, were always facing perfectly, precisely outward. She took an almost manic pride in these details. It was as if the rest of the house, the rest of our lives, could be a war zone underneath, but as long as the laundry looked perfect, she felt she was winning. This made it the perfect place for the next move. She handed me the basket that morning, not even looking up from her phone, just thrusting at me as I walked past. "You can throw this in," she said, her thumb scrolling endlessly. "Delicates. Cold." She paused, and her voice sharpened, gaining the edge of a headmistress. "And do not." She finally looked up, her eyes flat and annoyed, as if just explaining this to me was a profound and wearying chore. "Seriously, Michael, the white silk blouse. It's right on top." She gestured with her chin. "It's the one I got from the niche trunk show, the one I'm wearing to Marcy's party. It cost more than a mortgage payment. So do not screw it up." She narrowed her eyes, driving the point home. "It needs the special wool and silk wash. The silver bottle, not the regular stuff. Got it? A mortgage payment." She just had to get that in. A blouse that cost what I make in 2 weeks of overtime. Also, she could wear it to a party with the very women who were plotting my financial ruin. I just nodded, keeping my expression mild, almost blank. The perfect, obedient, slightly stupid husband. "Got it. White blouse. Silver bottle. Delicate. Don't just nod." She snapped, her patience clearly gone. "Pay attention. I swear, you're just floating through life these days. I have to manage everything." She turned and left the room, her heels clicking an angry, self-important rhythm on the hardwood. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. I could hear the distant, high-pitched murmur of her voice starting up in the living room. Another call with Jenna, no doubt. More whispered strategy. More laughter at my expense. I stood alone in the quiet, lavender-scented room. I looked down at the blouse. It was right on top, just as she'd said. It was beautiful, I had to admit. Creamy and possibly soft, it looked like liquid money. It was her armor. It was the costume of the queen she was playing, the one who was too good for her busted loafer husband. I reached into the cabinet, my hand moving past the silver bottle. My fingers brushed against another jar, tucked in the back. A tall, glass container with a handwritten sticker, just like all the others. Blueberry fabric soak. It was something she used for the guest towels, to make them smell like a 5-star spa. It was also, as I knew from a ruined dish towel last year, an incident for which I'd been thoroughly reamed, a dye. A potent, staining, chemical dye. It stained anything white if it wasn't diluted in a full 40-gallon tub. My hand hesitated. This felt different. My other moves, the learning, the apologies, the fawning, they were all passive. They were acts of omission, of playing a part. This was active. This was destruction. This was, for the first time, her kind of move. I stood there, my hand on the jar, feeling like I was on the edge of a cliff. Was I really going to do this? And then, clear as a bell from the living room, I heard her laugh. A high, sharp cackle. "Oh, I know," I heard her say. "It's like he's grateful I'm still here. He's so controllable." My hesitation vanished. It evaporated, replaced by something cold and hard and focused. I twisted the cap off slowly. The sickly sweet smell of fake blueberries hit me. I took the white silk blouse, the mortgage payment, the queen's costume, and I didn't pour the soak into the machine. I poured a generous, thick blue-purple splash directly onto the center of the fabric. It soaked in instantly like ink into snow. A dark, ugly, spreading stain. It looked like a wound. I felt a cold jolt, a mix of pure, unadulterated guilt and a terrible, thrilling adrenaline. I quickly balled up the blouse, tossed in a few other clothes to cover my crime, and started the cycle. Cold wash. Delicate, just like she'd asked. I didn't have to wait long. I had just poured a cup of coffee in the kitchen when, maybe 15 minutes later, I heard her walk into the laundry room. "Hey, did you remember to?" Her voice just stopped. A few seconds of dead, heavy silence. And then a sound. A small, high-pitched, "Oh." I picked up my coffee mug and started walking, timing my entrance perfectly. I appeared in the doorway, my face a mask of casual, innocent concern. She was standing in front of the washer. She'd opened it mid-cycle, water sloshing onto the floor. She was holding the blouse, dangling it from 2 fingers as if it were a dead, dripping rat. It was no longer white. It looked like a disastrous art project. Streaks of pale chemical blue and dark, bleeding purple had spiderwebbed across the entire front, the back, the sleeves. It was utterly, unequivocally ruined. Jessica was frozen, just staring at the fabric. Her knuckles, gripping the blouse, were white. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice full of mild, pleasant curiosity. She turned. Her movements were slow, almost robotic. Her face was chalk white. Then she held the blouse up. It dripped a small blue puddle onto the tile floor. "What is this?" she whispered. It was a terrifyingly quiet whisper, the kind that comes right before the explosion. I stepped forward, frowning, playing my part to perfection. "Oh, no," I said, my voice full of dawning horror. Did something bleed?" "Did something bleed?" she repeated, her voice cracking. And then she exploded. "Michael, what did you put in here?" "What did you do?" "Nothing," I said, raising my hands, taking a step back as if she'd struck me. Just the detergent, the silver bottle, and I thought, I grabbed that spa stuff, the blue one. I thought it would make it smell nice. Her eyes widened, bulging with a rage so pure it was almost impressive. The color rushed back to her face in a deep, blotchy red. The blueberry soak? On this? Are you seriously this stupid?" I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought." "You thought?" she shrieked, and now she was physically vibrating. "Do you ever think? Do you even listen to a single word I say? This is silk. You don't just toss silk in with random blue garbage." She was almost hyperventilating, pacing in the small room. "You don't think. You just float through everything, breaking things, and you don't even—" She stopped pacing and her face crumpled, but not in sadness, in pure, unadulterated fury. "And now I have nothing to wear to Marcy's party. This was the centerpiece of my outfit. This was, of course, the party, the performance. That's what this was about. Her costume was ruined. I let my own expression crumble. I looked down at the floor, letting my shoulders drop, embodying every inch of the pathetic man she called me. I'll buy you a new one," I said, my voice a low, ashamed mumble. "Buy me a new one," she laughed, a high, hysterical, mirthless sound that bounced off the tile. "You don't even know where I got this. You don't know the designer. It was custom. You can't just replace it." I just stood there, letting her rage wash over me. I looked up, my eyes wide, full of what she could only see as fear and stupidity. "You're right," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Jess. I wasn't thinking. I mess everything up." That stopped her. Her rage, which had been a roaring fire, suddenly dimmed. She stared at me, her chest heaving, but beneath the rage, I saw it. That flicker, the familiar, condescending misinterpretation. She wasn't looking at a man who had just declared war. She was looking at a man who was so broken, so nervous, so completely beaten down by her, that he couldn't even be trusted with a simple washing machine anymore. He was a fumbling, useless, pathetic child. My failure was the ultimate, irrefutable confirmation of her success. I'll try to clean it," I said quietly, my voice trembling as I reached for the ruined blouse. "Don't," she snapped, snatching away as if my very touch was poison. "You've done enough." She stormed off, clutching the damp, stained silk to her chest. Just before she slammed the laundry room door, I heard her mutter under her breath, a single word, dripping with all contempt in the world. "Pathetic." The door slammed shut. I stood alone in the laundry room, the air thick with lavender and chemical blueberries. The washer was still churning, oblivious. I listened to the sound of her heels fading down the hallway, the answering slam of our bedroom door. Then, and only then, did I let myself smile. It wasn't a nice smile. One more fracture in the ice. One more thread loosened in her perfect little queen costume. The thing about control, I thought, picking up the empty lid of the blueberry soak, is that once you're absolutely certain you have it, you stop looking for the danger right in front of your face. She didn't see the danger. Not yet. She just saw the fool, and the fool was winning. Business trip. I said the 2 words to her over breakfast. 2 days after the blouse incident. 2 days I had spent in the guest room, claiming I didn't want to bother her and was giving her space, a move that she, of course, interpreted as me being so ashamed and pathetic I couldn't even bear to sleep next to her. She didn't argue. I think she preferred it. She barely looked up from her phone when I said it. She was scrolling, her thumb a blur, her face set in that mask of bored, placid superiority. Where to? She asked, her voice completely flat. It wasn't a question of interest. It was a question of logistics. Upstate, I said, stirring my coffee. Team offsite. Just a couple of days. She nodded slowly, her eyes still fixed on the screen. Fine. Don't forget your laptop. She finally looked up, her gaze cool and remote. And don't call me if it's just to check in. I'll be busy. Of course, I said, my voice just as flat. Wouldn't want to bother you. The suitcase had been packed the night before in the quiet of the guest room. It was a perfect prop, just enough to seem like a trip for work. 2 button-down shirts, a notepad, my DOP kit, my work badge shoved casually into the front pocket. But I wasn't going to a hotel. I wasn't going to a conference center. I wasn't going anywhere remotely tied to the job I'd quietly excelled at while she'd been painting me as a directionless fool. I was going to the lake, 2.5 hours north, tucked between pine-covered hills in a silence, so thick you could hear your own heartbeat. It was a cabin owned by Drew, an old friend from college, a man who knew more about me than I'd ever had to put into words. He and Caleb, our other friend, were already waiting when my truck rumbled up the gravel driveway. The air smelled like pine needles and wood smoke. It was the first real, clean breath I'd taken in weeks. Drew clapped me on the back as I stepped inside, his grip strong and steady. He didn't say, "How are you?" He just looked at me, his eyes taking in the new, pinched lines around my mouth and the hollow, exhausted look I couldn't hide. "You look," he said, like a man trying to keep it together in public. "And barely succeeding," Caleb finished, grinning from an old leather armchair, a beer already in his hand. "I'm fine," I said, setting my bag down. The lie tasted like ash. "Sure you are," Drew muttered, already cracking a beer open and handing it to me. "Drink this, then talk." We sat in the kind of comfortable, worn-in silence that only decades of friendship can allow. No need to fill it. No one asking for updates or feigning sympathy. Just the sound of the wind brushing against the old window panes and the sharp, satisfying pop of wood splitting in the stone hearth. And eventually I spoke. I told them everything. I started in the hallway with the pastry box in my hand. I told him about the laughing, the clinking glasses. I recited the plan, controlled the rhythm, asked for the house, make him believe he's the one who broke me. I told him about the busted loafers. I told him about the flowers, the fake apologies, the laundry, the training. I told him about the sleek law office of Thomas Cranford, the silent, filed divorce papers waiting in a folder back home. And then, my voice dropping, I told him about the blouse, the mortgage payment, the blueberry soak. When I finished, the only sound was the crackling of the fire. Drew, who had been leaning against the mantel, let out a long, slow whistle. Caleb just stared into the flames, shaking his head. She really thinks you're that broken," Drew said finally, his voice a mix of awe and pure, unfiltered rage on my behalf. "She thinks you're just pathetic. She doesn't think," I said, taking a long pull from the beer. It was cold and bitter and perfect. "She scripts, she rehearses, she controls. I'm just her final act. The tragic, fumbling fool she gets a pity as she walks away with everything." Caleb leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his expression serious. "So what's the end game, Mike? You told us about the papers. Are you just going to serve them? Blow it all up at once?" I shook my head, staring into the fire. "No," I said. That's my old script. The honest, direct, let's just get this over and move. That's the man she expects." I looked up, my eyes meeting Drew's, then Caleb's. "No, I want her to walk straight into her own trap. I want her to stand on the X she so carefully painted on the floor for me." I took another breath. I want her to play her final scene, deliver her big, heartbreaking, "It's not you, it's me" speech. And I want to be ready for it. I want her to pull the trigger on a gun that she doesn't know isn't loaded. "God," Drew muttered, running a hand through his hair. "I would pay actual real money to see that. You might get to," I said, a cold, thin smile touching my lips for the first time. We stayed up late that night. We didn't do any more heavy strategizing. We just existed. We told old stories. We laughed about the time we nearly sank Drew's dad's boat. We talked about anything and everything but her. And it was that solidarity, that quiet, unspoken understanding from two men who saw me, that made me feel less alone in the decision I'd already made. The lake outside was a sheet of black, still glass, reflecting nothing but the stars and the dark, silent shadows of pines. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a weight in my chest shift. It didn't disappear, but it redistributed. It was no longer a crushing, suffocating burden. It was just weight, and weight was something I knew how to carry. I felt like I was finally standing upright again. By the time I drove back 2 days later, the air felt different, lighter. My thoughts were sharper. The dread that had fogged my entire world since that day in the hallway had finally thinned. Jessica was in the kitchen when I got home. She was on a video call, laughing, a glass of wine in her hand. She saw me walk in, gave a little, "Oh, he's back." I rolled the camera and then just turned away. She didn't smile. She didn't ask how the trip went. She just muttered, "Welcome back," to the wall, and kept on with her conversation. She was so confident, so dismissive. She still thought she was running the story. I just smiled, set my empty bag down by the door, and went to take a shower. Let her think it. Let her have her fun. Because soon, very soon, she'd be ready to perform her final scene, and I'd be ready to direct it. Jessica was humming when I came through the door. It was a soft, off-key, completely self-satisfied melody, something she only did when she felt like she'd won. It was the same tune I'd heard her humming right after she'd inspected my failed laundry folding, and the same one I'd heard her humming the night she trained me out of my loafers. It was her victory song. The air in the house was sweet, with whatever expensive perfume she reserved for gallery openings or dinners I wasn't invited to. The kind of scent that wasn't meant for me. It was meant to be noticed by others. She didn't say, "Welcome home." She didn't ask how the trip went. She was in the dining room, organizing something on the table, and she just glanced up as I walked in, her expression one of mild annoyance, as if her perfect, quiet game of house alone had ended a few hours too soon. "You're back," she said. Not a question, just a flat observation. "Caught an earlier train," I said. I was holding a new bouquet. I'd stopped at a high-end florist on the way from the station. I walked into the kitchen and set them on the counter. Not lilies this time. White and purple orchids. Elegant, expensive, and rare. She always said orchids were too refined to be common, that they made a woman feel important. After the blouse incident, I was supposed to be in the doghouse. This was the act of a man desperate to get out. A man who was willing to pay for his stupidity. I heard her stop humming. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, her arms crossed, watching me. "Orchids," she said. Her voice was flat, but I could see the flicker of a smirk. "Trying to buy your way back into my good graces after the laundry incident?" I turned, my face a mask of humble apology. I felt terrible about the blouse. I know I've been messing up. I wanted to get you something beautiful, to say I'm sorry. She stared at the flowers for a long, calculating moment. Then she did something that chilled me to the bone. She walked over, picked up the card, read it. It just said, "For you." And then she tossed it into the trash can by the sink. "They're fine," she said, but she didn't touch them. She didn't move to find a vase. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at it, and a genuine, bright smile lit up her face. A smile I hadn't seen directed at me in years. "Oh, hang on," she said, holding up a finger to me. The man who had just brought her $100 flowers, and she walked into the hallway, answering it, her voice dropping to that low, conspiratorial whisper I now knew so well. "Hey, girl," she said, her voice full of laughter. No, he just walked in. I stood perfectly still, pretending to put my keys in the bowl, straining to hear. "I'm not kidding," she whispered, followed by a breathy, suppressed laugh. "Orchids. This time, he bought orchids. Like a lot of them." A pause. "No, I didn't even thank him," she said, her voice dripping with smug amusement. I think I just stared at him, and then I just walked off. Girl, it's almost sad now. It's like kicking a puppy. He just keeps coming back, wagging his tail." Another peal of laughter. "MHM. Yeah, he's still completely clueless. You should have seen him after the blouse. He looked like he was going to cry. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. My fists clenched at my sides. Wagging his tail. Kicking a puppy. Clueless. I took a slow, deep breath. I uncurled my fingers. I turned on the sink tap, just for a second, to make a sound. I was fine. This was fine. This was the point. She returned a few minutes later, slipping her phone back into her pocket. The picture of casual indifference, as if she hadn't just been actively mocking me to her friends. "Oh, by the way," she said, leaning against the counter, grabbing an apple and polishing it on her shirt. "Jenna and Marcy are coming by this weekend. We're going to try that new tapas place downtown, the one in the Gilded Tower." "Sounds fun," I said, my voice perfectly neutral. She blinked. She'd expected. What? A whine? A complaint? What about me? She was thrown just slightly by my lack of resistance. "So, you don't mind?" she asked, testing me. "It's going to be a late one." "Not at all," I said, and then I saw the opening. The perfect, gleaming, wide-open door. I walked right through it. In fact, I paused, just long enough for it to register. "Why don't I take you all out? My treat." That stopped her, dead. Her hand, midway to her mouth with the apple, just froze. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing, trying to find the angle, the trick. "What?" "I insist," I said, and I put on my best, most earnest, apologetic fool smile. I've been terrible lately. The blouse, just everything. I've been distant. You've been working so hard, dealing with me. You deserve a proper night out. All of you, drinks, dessert, the works. On me." She stared at me for a beat longer than was comfortable. I could see the gears turning. I could see her brain processing this new, absurd, pathetic offer. The fool she'd been training wasn't just letting her go out. He was offering to pay for it. To come with him? "You want to come?" she asked, her voice laced with confusion that was almost comical. "I mean, if you'll have me," I said, shrugging, making myself small. "I know I haven't been, fun. I want to make it up to you. To all of you. Show you I can be better." This was for her the jackpot. It was the ultimate, final proof of her power. It was one thing to have a broken husband at home. It was another thing entirely to have him volunteer to be her prop, her jester, her ATM in front of her friends. To have him sit there, smiling, while she and her friends ran the show. It was a perfect, pathetic, final act of surrender. And it was the perfect setting for her divorce bomb. I saw the exact moment she realized it. A slow, calculated, predatory smile spread across her face. "Okay," she said, her voice suddenly sweet as poison. If you're offering." "Oh, I am," I said, stepping closer, my own smile in place. "Dress up. Bring your appetite. Let's make a night to remember." She didn't know it yet. She couldn't possibly know it. But I meant every single word. She thought she was setting the stage for her final, heartbreaking performance. She thought she was bringing her friends as witnesses to her tragic, necessary, dignified exit from our broken marriage. She had no idea that I was the one producing the show. I was the one who had just baited the trap, and she was walking right into it, humming her victory song. That night, I watched her across the dinner table, the one I had cooked on, as she laughed on the phone with Jenna, planning their outfits. She was radiant, untouchable, and completely, totally, blissfully unaware that I was already holding the final card. Back in the guest room, while she soaked in the bathtub, I took the divorce folder out of its locked drawer. The papers were signed, filed, dated. All that remained was the timing, the delivery, and now I knew exactly when it would be, in front of her friends, at that fancy tapas place, under the soft, expensive lights and the curated, smug smiles. She would finally get to perform her big line, "I want a divorce," and I would simply, finally, be ready to respond. The restaurant was called the Gilded Tower. It was exactly the kind of place Jessica loved. Pretentious, overpriced, and designed to make you feel like you were part of an exclusive club, even if you were just eating tapas. The napkins were linen, folded into an origami swan that looked too complicated to actually use. The servers, all dressed in identical black, moved like ghosts, refilling your water glass before you even realized it was half empty. It was a stage, a perfect, softly lit, expensive stage for a public execution, or in this case, a carefully rehearsed emotional performance. We were seated in a plush, camel-colored corner booth, curved and intimate, the kind meant for whispered secrets and anniversary toasts. Jessica slid in beside me, a little closer than she'd sat in months. Her dress, a deep emerald green, clung to her like a second skin. It was armor. Her silver heels, the ones that cost more than my car payment, tapped an almost imperceptible, confident rhythm on the marble floor, a metronome of absolute, unshakable confidence. Jenna and Marcy, her two co-conspirators, her personal Greek chorus, slid across from us. They were already buzzing, their eyes bright, a shared, electric secret passing between the three of them. "Wow," Marcy said, her eyes theatrically wide as she scanned the gold leaf menu. "Someone is really feeling generous tonight." Jessica smiled, a slow, perfect, practiced smile, and then the first move. She leaned into me, a casual, loving gesture, and placed her hand on my thigh just above the knee. A proprietary, public touch. It was for them, her audience. "Michael's just been surprisingly sweet lately," she said, her voice a syrupy, warm purr. "Haven't you, babe?" I turned and smiled at her, my own mass of devotion firmly in place. "Just try to be the man you deserve," I said. I felt her hand squeeze my leg. A little good boy reward. Across the table, Jenna snorted into her sangria. "Well, this is definitely a glow-up," Jenna said, her eyes sharp and assessing, landing on me. "What happened, Michael? You read a self-help book or something?" "Something like that," I said, my voice quiet as I unfolded my origami napkin. The conversation, for the first 20 minutes, was a masterclass in deception. It floated easily through appetizers, the gambas alla gillo, the patatas bravas. Jessica was radiant. She touched my arm when she laughed. She deferred to me on the wine choice, an act of performative submission that I knew was for a friend's benefit, and I played my part. I was the attentive, slightly broken, reformed husband. I was a fool who had seen the error of his ways, the busted loafers, the emotional distance, and was now desperately, pathetically trying to win back her affection. I saw her friends, her audience, throwing her subtle, almost imperceptible looks. "Is it time yet? Are you going to do it now?" They were here for main event, and the appetizers were just a prelude. By the time the dessert menu's small leather-bound books landed on the table with a soft thud, the energy changed. It dropped. The laughter quieted. The buzz of anticipation became a low, electric hum. This was it. Jessica leaned forward. She set her wine glass down on the table with a careful, deliberate, final click. She glanced at Jenna. She glanced at Marcy. A final, silent check-in with her team. Then her gaze landed on me. Her eyes were so soft, so full of pity, it was breathtaking. "Michael," she said, her voice so sweet, so gentle, so full of sorrow that she was faking, it made my stomach turn. "There's something I've been meaning to talk to you about." She looked over at her friends, a little, "see, I'm doing it" glance. "And I think it's better said here. With people I trust. With people I trust." A knife slipped between my ribs, so smoothly I barely felt it. I tilted my head, faking the perfect mask of dawning, innocent concern. What's on your mind, Jess?" She reached across the table for my hand. She didn't take it. She placed hers on top of it, a gesture of profound, condescending comfort, like a doctor about to deliver a terminal diagnosis. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, her voice a near whisper. "About us, about where we are and where we're going." I just nodded, my eyes wide, playing the part of the devoted, clueless husband to the bitter end. "And I've realized something important," she continued, her voice cracking. "Just enough. Sometimes two people love each other, but they grow apart. And that's no one's fault. It's just life." Across the table, I saw Jenna give her the tiniest, almost invisible nod, a stage manager's prompt. "You're doing great, sweetie. Now the final line." Jessica inhaled softly, a little, brave, heartbreaking breath. "So, I think I want a divorce." She said it with such grace, such poise, such magnanimity. She was offering me my freedom, a gift she decided I was too broken to ask for myself. Her eyes were glistening, the tears perfectly timed, welling up but not daring to fall and ruin her mascara. She was, I had to admit, a phenomenal actress. I let the silence hang. 1 second. 2. I let her feel the weight of her victory. I let her friends, Jen and Marcy, lean in, ready to comfort their brave, strong, victorious friend. Then I reached inside the breast pocket of my coat. I didn't say a word. I just pulled out a folded manila folder. I placed it gently on the table. It made a soft, definitive thud next to the dessert menus. Jessica's perfect, tear-filled, compassionate expression didn't just crack. It shattered. It evaporated. Her face went blank. "What?" she whispered. A tiny, lost, confused sound. The actress had just forgotten her lines. Jenna leaned forward, her eyes narrowing, trying to see the document. Marcy's eyes flicked from the folder, to me, to Jessica, and back again. I slid the folder across the linen tablecloth. It stopped right in front of her. Her name was on the tab, in Cranford precise, cold handwriting. Bennett Jessica. I met her gaze. My voice was calm. Not angry. Not sad. Just finished. Already signed, I said, and already filed. 3 weeks ago, actually. The silence at the table was suddenly louder than the entire, clinking, murmuring restaurant. You filed? She said, her voice a tiny, lost sound, all the air gone from her lungs. I nodded. I heard everything, Jessica. What? I leaned in, my voice just for her, but loud enough for the others to hear every single syllable. That day in the kitchen, with the pastries. The day I was supposed to be at the office. I watched the blood drain from her face. I heard the whole plan. Control the rhythm. Ask for the house. Make him believe he's the one who broke me. I saw Jenna flinch. I saw Marcy's jaw drop. And then, the most incredible thing happened. Marcy laughed. It wasn't a giggle. It was a high, sudden, uncontrollable wheeze of a laugh that startled the entire booth. She clapped her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with kind of horrified, delighted awe. "Oh, my God!" she wheezed, her shoulders shaking. You didn't know? Jess, you didn't know he heard." "Marcy, shut up," Jenna hissed, kicking her under the table, her face ashen. But Marcy couldn't stop. She was hysterical. This is better than I ever imagined. "Oh, my God." She looked at me, not with contempt, but with a kind of starstruck admiration. She actually thought she was running this. She was roasting your shoes. "Why are you laughing?" Jessica finally shrieked, her voice cracking, the mask of the graceful victim totally gone. Why are you laughing at me?" Marcy finally got herself under control, wiping a tear from her eye. "Because," she said, her voice shaking with suppressed laughter, "you got played, Jess. You got played harder than anyone I've ever seen. Look at him." She pointed at me. "He's not broken. He's not pathetic. He's brilliant. You didn't trap him. He trapped you." Jenna, the strategist, the one who'd whispered, "Ask for the house," just leaned back in the booth. She folded her arms. She looked at me, then at the wreck of her friend, and a look of cold, professional respect crossed her face. "Guess you weren't the queen after all," she said, her voice flat. Jessica looked at me, her face a crumpled, blotchy mass of pure, unfiltered hate. You set me up." "No," I said. I calmly picked up my linen napkin and folded it, placing it gently on the table. "You set yourself up. I just gave you the spotlight you always wanted." She stared at the folder. She stared at me. The check was still on the table. "My treat," I'd said. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I looked down at her, at all three of them, my face calm, centered, and for the first time in a decade, completely, totally free. "You said you wanted a divorce, Jessica," I said, my voice quiet, but carrying the sudden, dead silence of our booth. "You got it." Then I turned, and I walked out of the restaurant. I didn't run. I didn't look back. I just walked, my footsteps even, my head high, leaving the pinch of the aspirational shoes, the smell of the orchids, and the entire, toxic, gilded performance behind me. And as I pushed the heavy glass doors and into the cool, clean night air, I could just hear, faint and distant, the first sharp, choke sound of the show finally, spectacularly, falling apart. The drive home was silent. I didn't turn on the radio. The city lights smeared past the window, but I wasn't really seeing them. The adrenaline from the restaurant, that cold, sharp, high-voltage rush, was beginning to fade, and in its place was a profound, almost crushing weariness. I hadn't just ended a marriage. I had ended a performance. A long, exhausting, decade-long run of play I never knew I was in. I pulled into the driveway. The house was dark, just as I'd left it, but it felt different. It wasn't her house anymore, a stage for her ambitions. It was just a building. I walked in, not bothering to turn on the main lights. I went into the living room and stood in the dark, just breathing. I loosened the tie, the one she'd picked out for tonight's performance, and pulled it from my collar. I sat down in the armchair, the one I'd sat in while I'd folded her laundry, and for the first time in my adult life, I did absolutely nothing. I just waited. I didn't have to wait long. 10 minutes. That's all it took. I heard a car door slam outside, a sound so violent it echoed in the quiet street. I heard a key jammed into the lock, not with her usual graceful precision, but with a blind, angry fumbling. The front door slammed open, banging against the wall hard enough to make a hallway pictures rattle. She was standing in the entryway, a dark silhouette against the porch light. She didn't turn on the lights, either. Maybe she didn't want me to see her. I heard her kick off her heels. One, then the other. They skittered across the hardwood. Then, a sound I hadn't heard in years. A raw, choked, gulping sob. She was waiting for me when I got home from the restaurant, but not on the couch, not in the kitchen, ready for another round. She was standing by the front door, those expensive silver heels now off, her makeup, which had been so flawless, smudged in black streaks down her cheeks. She hadn't expected to cry. Not for real. Her arms were crossed, not in that smug, confident way, but like she was holding herself together. She looked small, smaller than I had ever seen her. Or maybe I thought I was just finally seeing her without the mask. "You set me up," she whispered, her voice a raw, broken sound, nothing like the sweet, controlled purr from the restaurant. I walked past her into the kitchen and set my keys in the tray by the door. I didn't look at her. "No, you set yourself up. I just gave you the spotlight you always wanted." "In front of my friends?" she shrieked, the anger suddenly rushing in to replace the grief. You humiliated me. You sat there, you let me, and you knew. You were playing me. Was I turned, leaning against the counter, my arms crossed. I was tired, but I was done. Or was I just playing a part you wrote for me? The pathetic, fumbling fool? The broken husband? The man who was learning? That was just talk," she cried, following me into the kitchen, her bare feet patting on the cold tile. "We were joking that day. You took it all out of context." I almost laughed. A cold, bitter, humorless sound. A joke. Control the rhythm. Ask for the house. Roasting my busted shoes. Was that all a joke, Jessica? Was it a joke when you told Jen I was wagging my tail like a pup you could kick? Was that girl talk? Her mouth opened, then closed. The blood drained from her face. She had no idea I'd heard that, too. That wasn't... you weren't supposed to hear. "No," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I wasn't. The fool wasn't supposed to be listening. The fool was supposed to be at a meeting. The fool was supposed to be wearing the shoes you picked, and folding your laundry, and apologizing for a blouse I didn't ruin." I... She was cornered. The anger was gone, replaced by a frantic, desperate energy. She stepped closer, her hands fluttering, reaching for me, then pulling back. "Michael, I don't want this to be over. I was stupid. Okay? I was stupid. I let them talk me into it. I let them make me act like someone I'm not." I looked at her. I really, truly looked at her. The tears were real now. The terror was real. But not because she'd lost me. Because she'd lost control. "No, Jessica," I said, and my voice was soft, but it was final. It was the sound of a door locking for the last time. "You didn't let them. You led them. That wasn't a person you were talked into acting like. That was the person you are. You just didn't think I'd ever see it. That was it. That was the truth." She looked like I'd slapped her. She stared at me, her face a crumpled, uncomprehending mask of grief. I never thought," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I never thought you'd outsmart me." "That's the problem," I replied, my voice just as quiet. "You never thought I could." The silence settled between us again. Not tense, not dramatic, just final, empty. "You can't," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You can't just throw away a marriage, our life, over one mistake." "One mistake." I said. I didn't raise my voice. "I didn't need to. You call this one mistake? You turned our marriage into a manipulation seminar. You plotted with your friends in our home how to systematically and emotionally humiliate me. You performed loving me every single day, just so you could leave on your terms and take half my life, all while making me think I was the one who broke you." I shook my head, a slow, final movement. "That's not one mistake, Jessica. That's a campaign." Her lips trembled. She had nothing left. No script. No audience. No mask. I walked past her, out of the kitchen, toward the bedroom. Our bedroom. She didn't follow. She just stood there, barefoot and broken, in the entryway of the home we used to share. Before I closed the door, I turned back one last time. She was just a silhouette in the dark, small and lost. "I didn't do this to hurt you, Jessica," I said, and I meant it. I did it to save myself. Then I shut the door. I turned the lock. The soft, heavy click was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. And for the first time in years, in that quiet, dark room, I finally felt like I was home.